long day. I hope you're having a good drive. We are on our way up to Rebbe's and Karuna's place for an interview on the subject of Benami in general and whatever Rebbe, Master Rebbe, wants to talk about. In the meantime, I have the expert videographer, Tahmpa, veteran, doing this operation for the sake of all beings while we are on the road, no less, driving dangerously up the highway north to Schenectady from Doje Drillbu, which I affectionately called the area of Huberg. Doje Drillbu. Now, do I have any questions to justify why I'm talking to myself while I drive on this journey? The question earlier was regarding time mastery and whether or not there's any validity to progression relative to time. If time itself is progression, or if time itself is an impediment to progression, and what is the basis, esoterically speaking, for the time wheel as traditionally recognized in terms of an astrologic system based upon the 12 signs. And I would have to say, well, it appears that in the material world, that you have the cycle of creation, which basically pertains to a physical appearance of transformation. So you have birth, you have childhood, you have developmental stages straight up to adolescence, and you have adulthood, you have age, and you have death following a sequence of relative progression based upon time, not necessarily equaling a spiritual progression or an enlightenment progression, which is most importantly the question. Whereas the system as inherited throughout the ages as began with the idea of Aries and ended with Pisces. And it seems that the meanings that have been ascribed to the system relative to signs as qualities, representing phases, windows, or lessons of progression, relative progression. We have the idea of the primordial represented by Aries, and then the universal represented by the last sign, which is Pisces. Ultimately representing compassion, which is like the opposite of a primordial impulse of, let's say, just getting up, arising, opening your eyelids, waking up. Aries, arise. So we have the appearance of progression relative to time, but it's not really a progression relative to time. We have an opportunity to progress relative to time. And the argument in this case would be, well, if you are a child in the misfortunate karma of being in let's say, an air wreck, airplane crash, and your parents and everyone else on board perish, and you as a child just happen to tumble out of the aircraft, and you are raised by natives or less animals somehow, and you are left to live for 30 or 40 years in that state. Would you have evolved? And to what degree of evolution would you have evolved by yourself or relative to time, as opposed to having the factor of culturing and education coming in and more or less forcing you to evolve? So what we are talking about here is that the fact of being born into a sign is not sufficient enough to say that that determines your level of evolution. That you have to actually progress more so than just in the time world. You have to progress relative to the space world. of developing a level of intelligence or unfolding a certain aspect of intelligence that would be then considered relative to higher intelligence, and then ultimately enlightened being, enlightened wisdom. So being born into any one sign doesn't guarantee or suggest or indicate to any valid degree that you have universal intelligence or universal consciousness or universal wisdom. So no sign, basically, in terms of a birth sign, is better or more evolved than the next. And that applies to the sun in any of these particular portals or windows or lessons of time or qualities of time or signs, or relative to the moon or any of the planets transiting or progressing through these signs as well. So that gives us then a basis of understanding that while there is some basis to cyclic evolution relative to time, that would make the time wheel or the astrologic wheel have some validity at a minimal level and relevance. The real purpose of it is to use it in conjunction with a number of other systems that help to develop consciousness beyond time. Then it becomes a ground factor, more so than any kind of measuring device relative to measuring intelligence and or state of enlightenment. That is as much as I want to comment on this right now. We'll take a pause and get back to a subsequent question. Hugh. Now, it is safe to say that no one is their time as much as they are their state of consciousness relative to time. In fact, we are only partially in time. We are space beings in time machines, as I have indicated in former sessions and in writings. And this is more important because it is by virtue of intelligence that we progress from a state of ignorance towards a blazing state of liberation and or ecstatic creativity. We have to understand that it is by virtue of our knowingness that we are able to traverse the universes of time, space, and the relative degrees of intelligence. That we bypass all of these relative degrees of intelligence and inch our way towards or take galaxial leaps towards the infinite level of intelligence. No intelligence, all intelligence, and understanding the moment, nowness, and the wisdom of nowness as a basic matrix for all possibilities of intelligence. Emptiness, radiance, silence, space, heart space. So now in the larger picture of destiny, it's then important to propose that there is a time for our enlightenment, but it's not based upon time itself or conditions manufactured of time, as much as conditions that are created out of our psychic nature of space relative to tension and release, which could be another word for time conditions. But then it's a matter of ecstatic release, like waking up, which may or may not have anything to do with time as much as pressure. So if time then is equated in terms of pressure, then there may be something to do with this idea of time as pressure and illumination or realization, see, which is profound breakthrough, see, as a result of pressure building, which is what the real engine is for the creative manifestation of spirit in the universe. Pressure, tension, and thus release. They are perfectly coordinated. Breaking point, breakthrough point, breaking open point, breaking down point, all of these, bursting forth, or maximal peak points, where one level of consciousness is transcended completely, which is good reference point for how it actually is as we move through the dimensions of consciousness, from the physical into the astral, into the causal memory time plane, and then into the higher causal and lower mental, and the higher mental, creative mental, and then the etheric beyond that, and pure force as we are now returning to the higher spiritual, beyond thought, beyond mind, beyond self-image, and all the rest of the materialized coverings and sheets that are conditional, and getting back to the heart realization of nowness. So you can awaken at any point into this realization despite your time or your sign of birth. So anyone would be hard-pressed really to prove to the world that most awakened beings are born in one sign or other more than the other. Well, no one's around checking. No one was around checking over all these years, thousands of years, all these epochs of time. No one cared about it because it is not determined by intellectual rationalization as much as by psychic and spiritual need for awakening, based upon the tensions and pressures of a particular region of the world where some level of illumination, radiance, or enlightenment is needed and required, often unbeknownst to most people, away from the eyes of the world. There you have another point, which I will take a break from. Thank you. We will continue as needed soon. Shoo. Now, relative to time mastery, astrology generally and traditionally, there has been an attempt to properly quantify what we are speaking about relative to the signs in terms of levels of the signs. So of course the mathematical mind would want to apply such a system to give some kind of developmental basis for understanding levels per sign. So we have a decadent system where you have 30 degrees originally, and then you have those 30 degrees broken down into low, medium, and high frequency, let's say high quality, high capability, on the basis of the element. So if we're talking Aries, we have the first 10 degrees of Aries, second 10 degrees would be the next fire sign, would be Leo quality, evolving from Aries, and then after that Sagittarian quality, evolving from Leo, and then each particular element having a certain configuration of these three grades included to give people maybe some self-righteous basis for feeling they are more evolved than others, which is also false. But again, it's a system that is not necessarily valid but useful in regards to the problem of everybody coming in at a certain period of time on another level of evolution, and thus while they're being born to a particular astrological time sign, they seem to be way beyond the others who may have been born the same day, maybe the same moment. See? And so we're talking about this discrepancy. There's no discrepancy here. See, it's not that astrology is not valid or invalid. It is valid because it has to do with the motion of the planets in relation to one another and the tensions that are created, which in terms of astrophysicists, they understand that these tensions can cause catastrophic events, which validates and justifies astrologic wisdom in terms of, well, what happens up there affects what's happening down here. Duh. We know that. There is synchronicity here. So it's then a matter of how it affects the individual based upon what their time is. And then that becomes a different kind of consideration. Because again, it's not the individual that is born of time. It is born through time, not of time. And thus being born through time can affect and or create or destroy time. Because it is not time, which may not be able to do that to itself as such. So, spiritual evolution apart from the implications of any mathematical or matho-psychological system that is to justify why one particular person born in one degree or one day of a sign is, let us say, naturally more advanced than the other, based upon some kind of interpretation of the 360-degree system. Now, I have my own system of degree interpretation, which is more justified, not so much relative to building the ego, but it's more justified relative to an intuitive interpretation and understanding of each one of the degrees relative to the cycle from Aries to Pisces, beginning again with Aries, but from the level not so much of the psychologic, but as such the intuitive and balancing tension, not so much self-imagery identification, but feeling the stresses and tensions of what we would call the time, space, energy, matter presence in the individual. Now, that's maybe just as abstract or absurd for someone to consider as astrology in its symbology would be. But when we're speaking about rest and spiritual practice, we mean to balance, bring peace to your body, which is a time, space, energy, matter, biosystem, machine. See? A world unto itself, but it's a universe also, like a solar system, a total unit unto itself. And so when we are practicing breathing, we are bringing all these forces, imagined and or proposed and or actual forces of breathing and tension and pain in the body and peace in the body, relaxation in the body. All of these are experientially sensible, let's say, states of consciousness, body-mind consciousness, that we can assess properly if your hand is hurting or if your hand is actually in a relaxed condition. All of this we can determine. And so practicing in the spiritual sense is to balance out all that is implied in the time sense or the astrologic sense of, well, you have a transit right now that is very catastrophic for you, or let's say a Saturn square Uranus or something, and so you have to experience this. Not necessarily so. Your body may experience these transits. Doesn't mean your mind cannot be somewhere else balancing and or creating some kind of a other state of consciousness, okay? Some kind of counter point, some kind of no state of consciousness, which is even more important. See, so while we have the time game or the time machine of the solar system, astrophysics determining stresses and tensions we will experience, we have to have a higher level of intelligence for consciousness management relative to such stresses and tensions, which, be that as it may, be a fact of the physical universe. We are responsible for other levels of consciousness beyond that, within the physical universe, within the time world, that are not as subject to, that is, less vulnerable to the physical as time, as pain, as stress, as suffering, as tension, as pressure that could reach a breaking point. Okay? So we have mind managing it. So it means that the system of astrology has to go hand in hand with the system of yoga. So then if the Hindus were using both systems together as one system, then they were using this system of time relative to space very wisely. It's as much as I care to say right now, to be continued very possibly. So thank you. Phew. One of the most crucial precepts of the time mastery system that I have more or less designed, created, invented, or proposed to peeps as a form of teaching has been the proposition that you are not any time, you are not a sign, you are not anything. okay, that we are, if anything, we are the total system. We are the zodiac in its entirety. We are every planet. We are everything in between the planets. We are the space. We are the zodiac belt of the signs, right? The constellations. Or we are the galaxy. We're the whole field. Now, astrology then would be a way of pinpointing and precisely negotiating what the debits are. The debits or assets might be relative to that particular time as determined by known values. And these known values would be based upon relatively time-proven ideas of aspects such as oppositions and squares and semi-squares and these kinds of configurations which represent tensions that can be extremely stressful, more so in some peeps than in other peeps. Okay? Now, I won't say that these peeps who are the more so's are weaker, because relative to time they may be the stronger and needing these stresses and can be used as exemplary examples of time stress or astrologic stresses based upon these systems of aspects and tensions, squares, and sextiles releases, and or trines even more so releases, can be seen as exactly and very, very precisely operational in these peeps. And their lives can more or less be exact portraits of the astrologic classic type, who, based upon their positions and what they go through over their lifetime, you see this precision relative to planetary transits and aspects and all the rest of it. Without which, you would never have a basis for the longevity of the science of astrology, had it not been for peeps who would be exactly in touch with these forces in such a way that they serve as classic examples of the validity of such a system of time and astrologic or astronomic correlation. Just a moment. I will take a pause for a second here and return to the podium. The proof of time being valid at the astrologic or astrophysics level is not really necessary. There's no need for any proof. The proof is there already. Coincidence is there. Correlation, all the rest of that is already the fact. What we need to prove beyond time as having anything to do with our destiny is relative to whether or not we have the intelligence to actually make progress in our life and go beyond our time limitations, our time patterning altogether. This is really the question. Proving time is not proving anything except our bondage and our imprisonment. Proving that we can be beyond that is more the case, more the challenge. See, this is the issue. This is what spiritual practice is for. So that you can enjoy your condition, your physical condition, your time machine, regardless of what condition it's in. Because your state of consciousness, your state of mind is liberated from that and able to, because of its nature as mind, experience its original, native, true bliss, see? Fullness, see? Its ecstatic pleasure and peace of being, see? This is what we're here to do, to enjoy the truth of being, not so much the barriers and implications, time implications and limitations and controls or advantages of being a time machine, see? But being a heart being. So we have to move from the power of being a time machine and the greatness of that, of what that might be relative to the material world, and now going beyond that into the potential of being a heart being and what spiritually and thus creatively that implies despite your time. So all that the time means is that you have a basis for then looking at what the prison is that you need to transcend, if not adjust and or manipulate to your advantage. So this is what practice is about. Recognizing the barriers, the limitations, and the conditions of time as they are imposed on us by the heartbeat, by the body of time, which is the universe, is the body of time. So now we have to have the body, or not so much the body of time, but the awareness of spirit in conjunction with that, which is the real thing, the light in the midst of the darkness, which is the world and material level of reality, the illumination of that, the source of it, the fire in the heart itself. And so this is our purpose now, is to awaken the fire in the consciousness. So it's to have intelligence, say, blazing beyond limitations, so as to understand what our relationship is to what could be called genius, as a liberating fire, see, that does not submit to or subject itself to the burden of time to a degree where it is impeded from succeeding to realize itself as liberational intelligence, creative intelligence. So here we want to be able to master time, and that's why I call it, the system I have, time mastery relative to the data of astrologic and or astronomic information, or logarithms and positions and all the rest of that. And now we want to enlighten our field with this kind of additional dimension of consciousness, which for the most part is traditionally known as the spiritual. I would say that's obsolete. This is more not the spiritual as a static reality of immateriality. No, it is more the creative intelligence level, which is the transformational level that takes all the matter and all that is created and recreates it as something more useful, more enlightened, more, let's say, creatively conducive to its own agenda of positive intelligence, not just self-destructive intelligence based upon conflict and warfare, let's say, competition with others in this world and throughout all worlds. But here, being at peace with yourself, being at peace with your body, with your situation, with your universe, making it work from the degree of heartful harmony and divine intelligence, which sees solutions everywhere, which is a solution in itself as an open mind, heartful, open mind solution, and a peaceful solution at that. Says, no, it's all workable. There's no real problem here. We can work it out. We have to be deeply intelligent enough to work it out without bias and prejudice, without selfishness, self-interest. So we have selfless, heartful intelligence working towards the benefit of making the whole thing work. And this is why, if it's astrology, or if it's time, or if it's life, it's materialism, or whatever it is, if it's scientism, anything and everything has to be used as wood for the fire of this great heart intelligence, or heart fire sound intelligence, which is trying to make deepest sense of the whole issue of what life tends to be for most people as a riddle or a problem, a dilemma, or a truth for themselves. End of this chapter, soon to be continued. Thank you. Shoo. Now, the last impression I want to give, based upon this more or less discourse on the fly at 80 miles an hour, is that it's useless to look into these things. No, it's urgent that you look into every conceivable factor that could influence your destiny and give you insight into your destiny as a progressing being, as an unfolding being, as a servant of humanity, as a professional, as a responsible human. And so astrology must not be overlooked. Because it's not the system itself, just like it's not about the system of music. It depends on the astrologer, the intelligence, the insight, the vision, or the genius through whom such a system is expressing itself. as some kind of vision relative to assisting people seeing and feeling their connection with everything else. So then it becomes who is saying what concerning or regarding a system. And then we will know whether or not we are on a path of darkness or path of illumination. So look into time. You are time. You must know your nature as time. And study not only astrological, astronomic patterns and trends, but also the moments of your life which you can record and you can use as some kind of reference for yourself as an unfolding being over a lifetime. So you want to be somewhat responsible for diaries, documenting your experiences, your high and low experiences, and what these in fact mean to you as an individual, and not exclude other levels of patterning that may have strong bearing, if not catastrophic bearing upon your particular time, your life, your moment in history, and so on. But not to allow these things to have command over your consciousness and complete determining control over your awareness and your life, because you are a liberated, potentially liberated being, a space being that has control over perception, and time being one such perception. Perception of space, perception of energy, perception of matter, perception of suffering, and perception of no suffering, perception of self and perception of no self, perception of thought and perception of that which is transcendent of thought, perception of mind and perception of what is transcendent of mind altogether, consciousness and awareness. So it's by your awareness that you determine more properly who and what you are in the world and beyond the world. And that's as much as I want to say right now. Take everything into consideration and be controlled by none of it. Be as you are originally. Original awareness, pure awareness, heart source. Here now. Know who. Who knows? Know who. Love always, you.